Obsession, to me, is a horror film that truly understands what makes great horror so effective. Scaring an audience is easy, but leaving them unnerved long after the credits roll is much harder. That's what separates the truly great horror films from merely the good ones. That lingering sense of dread isn't created by a single jump scare or a shocking moment. It's built patiently, scene by scene, until the film has quietly conditioned you to feel that something is deeply wrong. And Obsession understands that better than almost any horror film I've seen in recent years. And it all starts with the very first scene. Obsession opens by introducing us to our protagonist, Baron, or as he's called by most, Bear. We meet him in the middle of him pouring his heart out to a girl named Nikki, and within just a few minutes, this scene tells us almost everything we need to know about him. Bear is isolated. Ever since his grandmother passed away, he's been feeling completely alone within this world, and Nikki became the one person who brought some light back into an otherwise dark world. On the surface, it's a genuinely sweet confession, but there's one key detail about this confession that I think's important. Bear never actually says, "I love you." He never asks Nikki to be with him. Instead, all that he goes on about is that if he had to choose one person in the world, he would choose her. He wants her to fill some void within his life. It's an important distinction to me because it tells us something about Bear's character. This isn't someone trying to win a relationship through a grand romantic gesture. It's someone desperately trying to hold on to the only person who makes him feel like he is no longer alone. Bear's feelings immediately within this first scene, to me, read like they are clouded or misguided. He is vulnerable, and he is latched onto the first person who was there for him when his life got tough. And now we see fake Nikki's reaction. This isn't the real Nikki, but we're introduced to her and she seems to be quite moved by it. But more importantly, we're introduced to one of Bear's friends, Ian.
Stop. Okay, that was...
Ian is a very interesting character, immediately calling the confession cringy and not a good job, and stating that it would make Nikki feel disgusted. And what is interesting is, despite that the waitress on the opposite end of the table actually listens to the confession, really likes it, encourages Bear, and does say it's a nice sweet confession, even giving him some good alternatives to if maybe this is a bit too much, maybe it's a little bit too much emotion, you know, getting her a gift or taking her out somewhere that she might like. Ian immediately cuts her off and tells her that that is wrong. And Ian basically takes control of the situation, no longer allowing this random stranger to help him deal with his feelings and maybe approach Nikki in the future in a better way. Ian takes control and literally moves her out of the seat, and Ian takes the seat. This is a really small thing that the film does a lot. It uses visual storytelling to show you what characters are doing within their actions. Ian here moving the waitress out of the chair and him taking the chair shows how Bear's attention and what Bear's following and what advice he's going to be following is shifting completely. He is no longer listening to the girl that's actually giving him good advice. He's listening to Ian, who is calling him cringy and saying that his confession is terrible and disgusting. And now Ian gives Bear some of his own advice. He tells Bear that he should invite romance into this relationship. We can tell that Bear and Nikki probably have some sort of friendly relationship. They are friends maybe. And Ian is telling him to invite romance in, tease her a little bit, be playful. It's not bad advice. It's a good way to sort of throw your hook into the pond, but he tells him to call her,
Bring up Freaky Nikki.
something which Bear immediately tells him that's a bad idea, but Ian believes it's a good idea. And I think this tells us everything about Ian as a character. To me at first, Ian read like a character that was completely clueless about what was going on. He kind of reads like one of those lads kind of guys, a guy that thinks he's a hot shot, that he knows what's going on, that he's a bit of a smooth talker, he thinks like that, but he actually has fucking no clue whatsoever about like really deep shit like this, but somehow shit just works out for them, and it's reflected in how he tells Bear to approach the situation. But once you start looking into the future context within the movie, to me here, it's clear that Ian is almost trying to sabotage Bear in a way. Ian is a very different kind of friend who at first you might view as a bit stupid or less emotionally tapped in, but you notice as the film goes on that Ian is not that good of a friend to Bear. But upon Bear bringing up the idea to ask Nikki out during one of their weekly trivia nights, which is basically a pub quiz for my fellow Brits out there, he shuts him down immediately, makes it all about him, cracking a couple of jokes and calling Bear selfish for wanting him to ruin something that Ian likes, stating that he should do it at any other time as all he has is time. And I think this line hits Bear in a way that Ian doesn't truly understand. As we learned from him pouring out his heart, recently his grandmother died, and he may have reflected recently on how precious time truly is and how, despite feeling like we have so much of it, it always in the end feels like we never have enough. But Bear agrees, and before he can repeat what Ian is telling him, we cut and see a dead cat. How fun. But this is Bear's cat, Sandy, who somehow got into a bottle of sleeping medication and is now dead, and man, we can see it hits Bear in a big way as he cleans up the cat and puts the drugs back in the medicine cabinet. And we can see that they are for a Barbara Bailey, most likely his grandmother, along with a very large assortment of different drugs. Now, this again visually tells us a lot about Bear and how he is. We know that Bear's grandmother recently died, and I'm assuming he was living with her. But Bear hasn't even gone through the motions of cleaning up the belongings of his grandmother who passed away. One of the things people recommend for dealing with grief is to sort through belongings and get rid of the stuff that you don't need. Hanging on to every single item that a person had is almost a reflection that you are not letting a person go. Physically, it's a reflection of someone's psychology. They are not letting them go. They aren't moving on and grieving them. They are staying frozen in time, and Bear very much is frozen in time. As now with the dead cat, he starts cleaning up again, but he still doesn't grieve what has actually happened. He just cleans up the body, cleans up the blood or whatever's on the floor, and just carries on. It's clear that Obsession is going to dive into this theme of grief and how it affects people's lives, but something that I learned when I was much younger is that if you don't deal with grief and truly go through it and deal with those feelings and emotions, is that it can affect your life in ways you cannot imagine. But now we cut to him crying quite heavily, and we see a photo strip of Bear and his friends, with the top and bottom ones not being that important to me, other than the one with the crossed out eyes on Ian. But look at the middle two. The girl in the top one, when with Bear, isn't smiling, but Bear is. And then in the second one, where Ian is present, she is. Well, I think that's Ian, but Bear isn't smiling. This is telling us something. This is telling us that this relationship that this group has might not be in Bear's favor. And if I have to guess, potentially Bear might be jealous of the relationship that Ian has with Nikki. But as Bear is sobbing to himself, asking the question, why can't she? Who is she? Maybe Nikki, maybe it's his cat. We don't know yet. But we do get a quick title card, and goddamn, what a way to open a film. I really do like this film entirely and how it opens it. We learn so much, and we really establish that the key theme of this film is going to be looking into his grief, or more specifically, his unwillingness or inability to go through grief, as after he has been crying about his dead cat, we see he is just chilling there on his phone late night scrolling Nikki's Instagram. Oh boy, that is not a good look, is it? And placing this here does tell us who the she was. It does confirm that Bear is going on about Nikki, the girl in those photos that he has pinned to the wall. But what was the question Bear was asking? Was it that Nikki doesn't love him, want him? Who knows? We don't actually hear that. But he does get a call from her late at night, and the conversation is very casual, with Bear almost hiding what happened. Now stating he isn't going to make trivia night, but Nikki stating she wants to see him and that she was going to tell him something, almost getting his hopes up, and the film really smartly uses its soundtrack to give it more of an upbeat feeling. Obsession uses its soundtrack masterfully, and me as someone that doesn't really do and really is good at analyzing music, even I can see how well it uses its soundtrack to convey emotions and feelings. We feel what Bear's feeling. We feel that sense of joy creeping in, of excitement. Maybe she's going to ask him out. But she does actually reveal what she was going to tell him. That is that she's going to put her 2 weeks notice in at their job. And we can see that this shatters Bear's world. Now, why does she do this? Well, she states that she is running out of time. And now this makes Bear Bear feel inspired to do something, as maybe this will be his last chance to potentially go out with Nikki. But also she goes on about losing her necklace down a drain, and Bear gets an idea that he got from that waitress. And now we cut to the weird witch shop where Bear goes to buy Nikki a new necklace. He is taking the advice of the girl in the beginning. And the gift that he does get her is a thoughtful one at that, but he can't really decide on what necklace to get her to replace it. But the shopkeep does suggest a decent choice, a citrine necklace, sunshine in a rock. And this choice is very symbolic, and I want you to pick up what I'm putting down here. The citrine stone itself does embody / symbolize many different things, but mainly symbolizes things like joy, confidence, things that are vibey. But something more important in my eyes is that citrine embodies wealth, prosperity, and more specifically, fresh starts. Fresh like the morning sun. Bear hearing about Nikki wanting to get a fresh start and maybe change her path in life and go a different route, this is the perfect gift to give her. If he wants to show that he wants to encourage her to do this, that he wants what's best for her, this necklace is the perfect thing. It is the perfect gift. But notice that Bear looks at it, puts it back, and states Nikki would hate it. She legitimately said to him, this is what she wanted. Well, not the necklace, but the fresh start. She wants to, feel life again or whatever. She wants to pursue her dreams. And the necklace embodies that, and Bear looking at it, stating that she wouldn't want this and throwing it aside, literally tells us Bear doesn't understand Nikki as a person. He actually doesn't really get her. They aren't that close. But something else does catch Bear's eyes, and thus he finds the One Wish Willow. A simple little voodoo magic toy collectible thing that he would think is fake, and Bear buys it as a fun little novelty gift for Nikki. But the shopkeep does ask him to not come back and complain about what happens after he uses it. The shopkeep directly warns him here, but Bear still buys it, not believing that it actually works. And now we cut to the group's quiz night, and we meet to the main group here of Bear, Nikki, Ian, and a new girl, Sarah. And what I really like about this shot is that we can see Bear isn't really engaged in the conversation. He is just sort of sitting there listening as the camera slowly pans in isolation, focusing more and more on his loneliness. Despite Bear being surrounded by people and in a very lively environment, he never has felt more lonely in his life. It's a feeling that I myself can relate to heavily. But Bear wants to get Ian to help him fish his chance out, but he refuses, as Ian again doesn't want him to ruin the quiz night. But when Nikki goes to get some drinks, Bear quickly follows her to help her carry the drinks. But of course, we know that what his underlying goal actually is, and at this point in the film we actually get a good sort of insight into their relationship. It's very friendly, very jokey, in a very familial sense, in my opinion. They seem fairly close, very jokey in that way. Would I say it's romantical? Would I say that Nikki is flirting here? You could read it like that, but to me, it reads more like friends. Nikki here is joking around with Bear in the same way I think many people just joke around with their mates. Now, I could also say that Bear offering to pay for the drinks and Nikki not letting him could be a subtle hint that, hey, maybe she doesn't see him as a man, as that is the traditional male thing to do. But again, this isn't the olden days anymore. It's not really a thing anymore. It's kind of discouraged now all the time. But there could be something in it. Maybe Nikki does not see him as a potential date or whatever, or someone she romantically has any interest in, and wouldn't even think that he should be paying for this, if that makes sense. But each time Bear tries to tell Nikki something, he gets interrupted by a different person. First the barkeep, then Ian talking about Sarah's dad keeping a gun in the shop in a safe, and then Sarah that then comes over, and then they all drink to Sandy, with Nikki and Ian then leaving and only Sarah questioning why they were drinking to Sandy, with Bear telling her that Sandy died. How sad. With the camera now pulling in, this is the one moment a friend is actually there for him that we have seen thus far, but Bear seems almost annoyed in a way that it's the wrong friend. And then we cut immediately. We don't even let this moment simmer. It just moves on with the group now leaving the bar. The film's almost telling us that this moment doesn't matter to Bear. He doesn't care that Sarah was showing him attention. To be honest, he might not even care that his cat died that much. He might be using it because he wants to get some form of attention from Nikki. And with some of the group now wanting to go to karaoke, but Nikki doesn't want to, Bear takes this opportunity to again be alone with Nikki, then taking her home. But notice that even though Bear doesn't want to go because, you know, maybe he isn't feeling it, cat died, he just, you know, he didn't really want to go out in the first place, but Sarah wants him to go. It's a weird moment to me because as a friend, I feel like in this moment you should understand that maybe they're not feeling it, they're not up to it, they're not wanting to get all happy and jokey at the moment, they just want to go home and go to bed. It feels like a really weird moment and kind of feels out of character for her because she's the one that was on the pulse, was the one that gave a shit about what was going on with Bear, but maybe it could clue us into maybe her problem as a friend, that she isn't there enough, she isn't in tune enough, she doesn't, I guess, care enough about some of these people. Maybe it shows her first negative trait in a way, how selfish she can be as a character. And you'll see this pop up now and again throughout the film. But notice when Nikki asks for some cash, she immediately takes it from Sarah and gives it to the homeless man. And what begins playing, I call Bike with Baskets ass sounding music. This was a joke me and my friends used to have where it sounds like music that would be playing in a film with someone riding on a bike with a basket on the front. This song itself starts to play and drown out everything as Bear starts staring at Nikki, almost putting her on a pedestal, looking at her as something greater than him, greater than everything else around him, someone that is perfect. Now the song that I can't play for obvious reasons, it's called There's No Other by Felly, a song that explores the emotional paradox of relationships. Well, that's what Google tells me, but I do think this song is very purposefully placed as it reflects the theme of wanting to be with a specific person or be in love with said person, with many of the lyrics reflecting thus. Now I could go into the entire lyrical analysis of it, but basically the song entirely sums up the idea that someone's falling in love with someone even though they were told that they couldn't be together with that person, but they feel like their life can't go on without that person. It's telling us that Bear feels like he needs Nikki in his life. It's not that he wants her, he wants to get to know her more, fall in love with her. He feels like he needs to have her to carry on. He has lost too much that he needs something to replace it with. But is this love reciprocated? As when Ian makes the joke of get your girl home safe, Nikki responds with a
ew, don't say it like that.
Yeah, it's not very nice, but I think this is telling us that Nikki doesn't really look at Bear in that way. And the drive home is quiet and awkward, and Bear does not help himself. But Bear did tell Nikki about what happened with his cat, with Nikki stating that she will be there if he needs him in the future, but it feels very awkward, this conversation. Not only does it not feel like Nikki isn't really there within it, but it feels like each person is hiding something from the other. But Bear switches the conversation to talking about Nikki leaving her job, with Bear questioning why. And Nikki's reasoning is that she wants to focus on her writing, but being there is hindering her ability to do it, as
I'm not feeling love.
she doesn't feel any form of love being within that job. And this scene itself is really important, as I think Bear misunderstands completely what she means by feeling love. And this is then reinforced and reflected by when Nikki tells him about the writing and he asks,
So it's a romance?
No, it's not a romance, it's a love story.
and he misunderstands and doesn't realize there's a difference between a love story, which is what Nikki is writing, and a romance, which is what Bear believes all love stories are. So let's start with the first line that she states. Why doesn't she feel love? This isn't Nikki going, oh Bear, I really, really, really wish I had a boyfriend right now. Oh gosh, dang it, I just want to be loved. That isn't what Nikki is saying here. She doesn't feel love at all for others, for herself, for the work she's doing, for the story she's passionately writing. She doesn't feel love in life at all. Love is a weird emotion and it's impossible to explain because it encompasses a lot more than just loving another person. Not loving something creative driven like writing, like you're not in love with the process, can severely impact the quality and the feeling of doing something. It can completely hinder your ability to do it. If Nikki doesn't feel love at all in her life, trying to write a love story specifically and one that she wants to be proud of is practically impossible. You can't be creative and especially can't write a love story if you don't feel love. And this is a feeling I really relate to a hell of a lot currently right now. For those who don't know, I do YouTube basically full-time hours. Pretty much any time I have that's free is YouTube. I probably spend 100+ hours a week doing YouTube stuff. Scripting, writing, editing, you name it, I do it. But I also work an actual job part-time, 20 hours a week. Yeah, it's part-time, but it's still 5 days a week. I have to be in that job 5 times in the week. And this change in job, because I used to only do a few days a week, but they were longer shifts, completely changed how my day-to-day life is. Because basically every day, not only am I working on YouTube stuff, I'm also doing an actual job. Before, though, I would literally spend one day just at work and then playing games for the channel, and then every other day would be doing YouTube. It felt like there was a big distinction. Having such a heavy workload like this can make you feel numb and tired all of the time, and emotions can be clouded a hell of a lot. And in creative tasks like writing, or in my case, these stupid videos that I make where I have to write about tough subjects and emotions that I'm feeling, you can really start to feel yourself lose that love for that thing. I love doing YouTube. I fucking love this creative side of me that I've found, but I have felt for the past few months, which I mentioned in the Far Cry 5 video, about struggling to keep going on these videos because it's burning me. There's just no love in it from me. It's not the actual task that has burnt me out. I want to make that clear. It's not just making the videos, but it's also working and not having any free time to just chill out. I'm working a real job and my dream job at the same time. There's just no break. So even though I really do enjoy what I'm doing, it just feels draining all the time because I'm not taking the time to really appreciate it and feel the love of doing it. I myself have questioned whether I should hand in my 2 weeks to my actual job so I can pursue YouTube full time. There's many reasons why I haven't done that yet, but I will probably do it within the future, maybe sooner rather than later. Friend at work though, don't worry, I won't leave you high and dry. I'll wait for you to escape that hellhole before I fuck off. But the love that Nikki is talking about is wildly different from the love that Bear is thinking about. And that is reflected in Bear's very next question about the difference between a romance and a love story. A romance always has a happy ending, a happy ever after ending, that is, where the main couple, or I guess group if we're talking about weird anime romance shit, all achieve their dream and they live happily ever after and the stories end on a good note. But love stories are different. All romances are love stories, but not every love story is a romance. Some love stories don't have good endings. This is kind of diving into genre conventions, more specifically for novels and books writing. So it's a bit messy, as if you go into, say, something like the romance genre for anime and TV shows, there will be a few that have bad endings that are still considered romance. But within writing, romance normally always has a happy ending. But for a love story, it doesn't, and this is because most book publishers require for something to be labeled as a romance book, it needs to focus on a central relationship and have a happy ever after ending. If it doesn't have one of those two things, it can't be a romance. It's a love story. The most famous love story, Romeo and Juliet, is often mistaken for a romance. It's not a romance, it's a tragedy. Love stories often look into more negative aspects and sides of love, often can be more thoughtful, and in my experience, a lot more hard-hitting. Both Bear and Nikki are experiencing a lack of love, but in very different ways. Bear feels isolated and stricken with grief. He can't move through it, and he doesn't feel the love that he once felt from his grandmother, his cat, his life, whatever. But Nikki doesn't feel love because she feels numb and overwhelmed by her everyday life. And they each desire a different answer to that same question and that same search for love. One wants to find love that will fix him, or I guess fill the hole that is within him, and the other wants to understand herself better and reconnect to her emotions within her. Take a break from everything and come back maybe understanding love a bit more and feel ready to take on the world again and start writing again. But the most important part here is that Bear is not truly understanding what Nikki is talking about. He is viewing it through his lens of what love is. Love to him is something that fixes all of his problems. He believes that if he achieves love, if he finds love, it will naturally lead him to happiness, like in a romance. While Nikki knows that despite having love, she probably does feel love from people, it doesn't mean happiness will come. Love isn't defined by its ending. It does not overwrite emotions in life. Love lives alongside all emotions. And love isn't the end of someone's life or someone's story. It's a part of it. That's what a love story is. It doesn't have love be the end. It has love be a central part of it, but not the main point of it. This to me shows a fundamental difference between Nikki and Bear in not only their lived experiences, but also their understanding of life. Bear believes in an almost naive, childlike way that life always must end on a happy note, with it all being worth it in the end, while Nikki most likely has been shown and sees life what it truly is, a mishmash of happy and sad days that are defined by the darkest and brightest ones. I absolutely adore this scene because to me, is it not only my favourite in the entire film, it shows massive character differences between Nikki and Bear, but also it sets the core theme of obsession, or I guess the question that obsession lays out for us. What does it mean to love someone? But not only that, it shows why Nikki and Bear will never work as a couple. They are way too different in how they see love as a topic and how they approach life in general. They can be great friends, they can be best friends at that, but I think at a fundamental level where each of them needs something very different from one another, neither of them can give that to them. But after this, Bear moves along and says to Nikki that he got her a gift, which weirds her out, which upsets Bear in a way because he thought he did something nice, almost reinforcing Ian's advice. But maybe if Bear didn't do it in such a fucking weird way, she wouldn't be weirded out. But he did do it out of the kindness of his heart, but it is brushed off, which is kind of shitty and does kind of put a dampener on it. But now returning to Nikki's house, Nikki brings up Sarah, the other girl of the group, and how Bear feels about Sarah. And yeah, big moment here. Does probably suck to have the girl that you have a crush on ask you about another girl that you don't really care about, as it seems like she's only slightly encouraging you to maybe cast your line in that pond and almost throwing your line out of hers. But what the most interesting thing about this scene is Nikki is completely fucking unreadable. You cannot read her emotions or what she's feeling or thinking at all. You cannot say if she's probing Bear for info on if he is interested in another girl to maybe see if she can help him achieve that, or maybe to see if she has a chance at being with him, or if it's just siblings kind of just fucking joking around and poking fun at each other. This is intentional. The director, Kari Baker, made this scene be done multiple times with Nikki throughout of it doing different things, making her intentionally hard to read, having actress Indy Navarrete, I'm terrible with names, do the scene multiple times, but using takes of her being emotionally interested in Bear as a lover, and others being indifferent, not caring, maybe as siblings, whatever, you get the point. They're all mishmashed together, making her entirely unreadable. And when you have an actress who is very good at facial emotions and acting with her face, it leads to a scene that is very uncomfortable and very hard to be in. It makes you really be there with Bear where he cannot read this situation. He is terrible at it and it is so well done. To me, this almost adds and makes the viewer relate to Bear a lot more, as he is unable to grasp Nikki's emotions towards him, allowing us to relate to him even more and be right there in the moment with him. And now when the scene starts to shift, it hits as hard as it's meant to, as we are engaged entirely, as we ourselves are trying to figure out what Nikki's feeling as well. With Bear now calling Nikki back as he was about to ask her something, then give her the gift, but then chickened out, and then being cut off again while trying to explain some bullshit about school or something. So it does tell us that they do have some past together as well in school. But then within one last ditch effort to keep her attention, Bear takes the advice of Ian and calls out to her,
Night, Freaky Nikki.
The shift here is fucking marvelous. I love it. I absolutely adore it. As in my eyes, this is the first true horror scene. The horror of Bear here fumbling the bag, because my god lad, you did a bad job here. Only joking, but as the score starts to shift into these droning noises and the camera is obstructed so we can't actually see Nikki's face again, we can't read the situation. We can't read if she's going to joke back, you know, throw a name at Bear that he might be called, or if she's genuinely pissed about it. It's intentionally awkward and intentionally uncomfortable to watch. And while Nikki's reaction might seem a bit extreme, some people do not like being called a name that they don't like, even as a joke. Names like this can really test a relationship, be it a friendship or one that you want to be more romantical. And the fact that Bear did this thinking it was a good idea, to me either shows how fucking stupid he truly is, or he doesn't actually give a fuck about Nikki as a person. He doesn't have that strong of a relationship with her. It's more superficial. As someone who goes by many names, I have one specific name I tell everyone to not call me. Why? I just fucking hate the name. It's a shortened version of my full name, but there's one name I just can't stand. I do not like being called this name. Why? I don't know. I just do not like it. And when people do call you it and then keep calling you it even after you tell them not to, it isn't just annoying, it's incredibly disrespectful and just feels like you're being wronged. Your name is your identity, and being called one that you either A, don't like, or B, one that is used to degrade and make a joke of you, such as Freaky Nikki here, it just is not nice. It feels like the people around you are not valuing you for who you are or your desires of who you want to be. A name isn't just something that identifies you, it defines who you are. That name associates you with everything you do. So when people use a name that you don't like, it feels like an attack on you as a person. But with Nikki now being hurt, rightfully so, by this, Nikki approaches the car and we can see she is pissed, now asking Bear if he has feelings for her, intentionally avoiding eye contact while asking the question, potentially telling us that she can't even take this whole situation seriously, but then maintaining eye contact when awaiting the response, showing she is fully serious about getting an answer back. I could armchair psychology this with eye contact and shit, but again, Nikki is hard to read as a character. She literally stated to us that
When I have a crush on a guy, no one knows.
So even me armchair psychologying this, I won't be able to figure it out. Nikki is a girl who is clearly very confident in herself, and even her looking away I don't think is out of shyness. I think it's more out of the stupidity of what Bear is doing, and potentially the thought of this person who I might see as my younger brother has feelings for me, maybe disgusting her in a way. But even when Bear is given the prime opportunity to deal with these emotions here and now, there is never a point where the iron will be hotter than this to strike it. He doesn't. He mumbles, fumbles over his words, and then lies. This is a really unhealthy thing to do, in my opinion. Not only for Bear, but also on the side of Nikki, because it is pressuring Bear into a situation that he might not feel comfortable in. Clearly Bear is not ready to talk about said feelings, but he needs to, and Nikki almost tries to force it out of him completely. And when he does answer, it's clear that Nikki got the answer she wanted to hear, almost making it feel like Bear's feelings are wrong. Bear is in a bad place. He is placing Nikki on a pedestal clearly and does not want to have a deeper, meaningful relationship with her. He just wants her. But maybe due to current life events, he feels scared that his actions might lead him to lose even more, explaining why he's not actually pursuing her in any sort of way, asking her out. I mean, it's no secret that friend groups can very easily fall apart when people start dating within them and arguments start ensuing and people don't want to be around other people because certain things happen. Shit like that happens in life. I've watched it happen. It didn't happen within my group. Oh, it kind of did, but the girl wasn't part of our group because there was no girls in our group because we kind of were a lads group. But of course, shit happened. But I saw it at loads, especially in school. Entire friend groups would collapse and reform into new subgroups because one of the guys and girls started dating, they argued, shit happened, people pick sides, and the group splits up. It just happens. And maybe that's what Bear fears. Maybe if he does do this to Nikki, she will push him away, and she is probably more popular than Bear because Bear does seem quite quiet. But diving into deeper feelings and talking about likes and love between people, while on paper is the right thing to do. It is. That's what you should do if you are having this feeling within you that is overbearing on your life. It often doesn't lead to good things happening. It doesn't often lead to a good outcome. Bear might have been judged for these feelings by Nikki. We don't actually really know what she would have done. She might have made fun of him, pointed and laughed and whatever. Nikki has already shown that she will poke and make fun of people for what they do, the pina colada joke. So maybe she would do that with Bear again if he did admit to these feelings. I think here Bear is just scared of ruining the relationship that he already has with Nikki, so he completely chickens out and moves on, but not before deciding to pull out the one wish willow which was meant to be a gift to Nikki, and he decides to make a wish with it. What is that wish? Well,
I wish Nikki Freeman loved me more than anyone in the fucking world.
He wishes for Nikki to love him more than anyone in the world. Not for her to just love him, but for Bear to be at the very top of that list. And now as he looks over at Nikki's house, she is just standing there menacingly, and man, I love this scene. Of course, it's meant to be a reflection of the scene like 5 seconds ago with her standing as we can't see her face, but this time she's just standing there. Also, what makes it way more uncomfortable is we can actually hear Nikki open and close the door earlier, but we don't actually hear her come back out. So when Bear does look over, the audience heard her go in the house. So her being outside is just fucking weird and doesn't make sense. It throws you for a loop. Good bit of horror and really smart sound design used in the film. And what ensues following this is very freaky, as Nikki's personality just flips, going on about losing her cat, then remembering it was Bear, but she keeps inviting Bear inside. And then she realizes she's acting so weird, but then carries on acting weird, and then just gets back in his car and wants to go back to Bear's place. And Bear states that he's never seen her act like this. The film clearly is stating Nikki has changed completely after the wish was made. But despite Bear being given again the golden opportunity to take Nikki home with him, he does state that she should probably go home, get some rest. But then Nikki starts going on about how she can't be left alone and that her dad's dying, and starts crying. So Bear, feeling guilty, brings her back to his place, with Nikki stating that the place smells like him. Kind of weird. But within this scene, we then have one of the biggest character shifts, with Nikki asking Bear to sleep with her. And the music shifts from a creepy droning noise, with Bear being uncomfortable with how she's acting, to now a more upbeat tune, reflecting what Bear is actually feeling, going from being weirded out and freaked out a bit to now being happy that his wish is coming true, that everything is going his way, and his everything that he wanted was Nikki. Also, cool shot with Nikki almost being in warm colors here and Bear being pale, reflecting how Bear sees the world. He himself shrouded in the darkness, but Nikki shines in the dark world. Great little bit of cinematography there. And again, to reinforce this, when she goes on about needing this, the light in the scene then shifts over to Bear, no longer illuminating Nikki, but illuminating Bear, showing how this one conversation, these actions are lighting up his world. And with the camera slowly zooming in, guess what happens next, dear viewer? Does Bear A, run away screaming, being scared of women like me? B, does he get interrupted by someone at the door trying to tell him about their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? Or C, does he start making love to Nikki? It's C, it's answer C, it would always be C. Now, of course, as they are doing the fun stuff, at some point, Nikki just stops.
What the fuck?
Starts freaking out and asks what the fuck is going on, but then returns right back to how she just was, apologizing for it and just wanting to continue. I don't really like talking about stories out of order. Like, I don't want to be pulling stuff that happens later in the film forward, because I feel like stories like this, they show the build up. They show things slowly being put into place that you need to pick up on. But it's apparent here that Nikki isn't right. Almost like there are two different people within her, with one of them occasionally coming out and freaking out. But this Nikki plays it like there's something wrong with her, and this scares Bear so much that when Nikki is asleep, he looks up the One Wish Willow and finds conflicting reports on it being real and also being fake. It's clear Bear believes that maybe his wish has had something to do with Nikki's complete shift in her personality. Now, from these comments, we can't really gain anything from them at all. I thought maybe the ones that were more popular would be like the ones that were saying it was real, but none of them seem to be like this. I thought maybe the ones that were saying they were fake were all stores, because they all had like kind of shop sounding names, but then one of them didn't, so I guess I'm wrong. There's nothing really here. Now, do they work? Spoiler alert, yeah they do. But with Bear still being as confused as the audience at this point, he finds that he woke up Nikki and she wants him to again lay in bed with her. He agrees, and then he wakes up in the morning without any incident, but heading in to get some good old brekkie, which looks like eggs and toast, and I've been really trying to figure out what that thing is. I think it's an orange. I can't tell what it is though, it's some weird American thing. But Bear in the kitchen finds quite the strange little shrine to his dead cat, and Nikki made it thinking Bear would like it, but of course Bear is deeply disturbed and we hear that droning noise coming back in again, showing that Bear isn't exactly loving the paradise that he wished for. It's clear that this Nikki that is here right now isn't the same one that we were seeing talking to Bear at the bar and in his car. She's doing a lot for Bear for no real reason at this point. But now Bear and Nikki head to their workplace and he tells Ian about what happened, and to me it's clear Bear is scared of what is actually happening, and he tells Ian all of the information about Nikki talking about her dad, her weird mood swings and like screaming and crying and just being absolutely freaky, coming to the conclusion that most likely Nikki is going through some sort of mental break after the news of her father's cancer diagnosis. But Ian then asks, maybe Nikki has been on Molly. Molly, of course, drug. But even when Bear asks Ian to investigate, figure out what was going on, when he goes to talk to Nikki, all she does is stare at Bear, showing that Bear is the only thing on her mind at this current moment. But at the end of their shift, Bear then has Ian take Nikki home to see if he can get to the bottom of what happened by asking Nikki about her problems. And also maybe Bear can get a little bit of his own research done into the side effects of Molly, which he finds seemingly line up with what happened last night. Intensified emotions, both positive and negative, the love, kissing part, and then the crying and sadness, mood swings, and so on. Restlessness and or insomnia. It did seem like she struggled to sleep, and impaired judgment, the cat thing. All of this does lead to Bear believing that most likely Nikki was absolutely high out of her mind on Molly, and he just kind of got caught in the crossfire of it. But as Bear is on the phone with Ian, someone knocks on the door, and guess who has appeared? Nikki at the front door, who has come to apologize for what happened. And what I like about this scene a lot is we kind of got an explanation for what happened. It kind of makes the wish seem like, oh, that's, it was a joke toy, it wasn't real. The drugs are what caused it. But now we are brought back straight away with Nikki coming to Bear's house to apologize, something that she could have done at work or on the phone or at their next shift. But she came to his house. Now again, what I also love about the scene is you can actually not really see Nikki's face that well. You can't read her emotions again as she's obscured in darkness. It's a great scene because, again, Bear in this moment doesn't understand Nikki. He's got an answer that all of that shit that happened last night was due to drugs. It wasn't real. It was Nikki mentally not being all right, so he can't read her again. And the conversation that ensues is very telling of that, but also very telling of Bear as a person. Of course, with the revelation that Nikki was on drugs, so much so that it was affecting her mental state and affecting her judgment, this does technically classify itself as some form of sexual assault. The legal definition would define it as much if she was on Molly, so much so that it would affect the way she's thinking. And also, there's another Nikki in her, spoiler alert, that's trapped within her, the real one, so it is technically sexual assault, even if she wasn't on drugs. But Bear, what I find most interestingly, is that he immediately starts shutting down the idea of what he did was sexual assault, that he took advantage of her. He shuts it down and tries to cover his own arse before actually checking on Nikki, making sure she's okay. He didn't want the idea of him taking advantage of her to even be the first thought. It shows how selfish Bear is as a person. Even when Nikki is stating he didn't take advantage of her, it's all he thinks about. He doesn't care for her as a person. Even after they clear up that misunderstanding, that you didn't take advantage of me, yada yada yada, he never actually checks on her if she's alright. He never asks, were you on drugs? Were you out of your mind or whatever? He just completely forgets about everything that happened and just moves on from it. And of course, Nikki then asks the question of, do you like me, Bear? Because I like you. He completely ignores what happens and just moves on, focusing on the relationship because that's what he wants. The relationship that he desperately wanted to blossom is, and he just goes on with it, even though he has that big lingering question in the back of his head. What the fuck was going on last night? But of course, after Bear gets the answer that he wants, that the girl of his dreams actually is in love with him, he of course reciprocates that answer, and then we get this nice little romantical montage. These are always put in films to show a large passage of time, but what I like how it's used here is it doesn't allow us to focus on the romance part of the relationship, like the lovey-dovey stuff. It purposefully makes this feel almost dreamlike, like it isn't real. Maybe because it isn't real. It's put in a montage because it isn't the focus, because again, it's fake. It's not a real relationship. But within this montage, we see that a lot of the other people within their lives are extremely weirded out by the relationship. Sarah, Ian, even Sarah's dad, I'm guessing their boss, finds it very odd how much they are spending so much time together and obviously being as close as they are. Also, this Nikki laughs at an AI meme. She's not real, she's fake. But eventually after the montage, we rejoin the pair on a date, which Bear talks about his future plans on life, wanting to be a food critic. And again, I can't lie, this really does show how naive Bear is as a person. I mean, I'm definitely not one to talk about being naive in future plans, as I'm currently pursuing a very realistic goal of being YouTuber, but you don't just become a food critic. You don't just fall into that profession like Bear is insinuating. You need to really apply yourself to it, and you have to build a platform and build your voice within the food world to be a respected critic so you can make a living off of it. Take it from a guy who is building a dream career in a field that is extremely competitive, where you need to basically do the same thing. Just because the job seems fun does not mean it is fun. Food critics mainly are writers. They're not eating food and just judging food. They make their money from their writing, or sometimes videos and food reviews that are videos. They do other things in association with that. I would bet money that most food critics will spend 10 times, if not 100 times more time writing about, thinking about, reviewing food than actually eating the food. It's like me, when I play a game or watch a movie, I will spend 10, if not 100 times more time on actually writing, recording and editing the video than I do doing the fun part, watching the film or playing the game. Do I enjoy doing it? Yeah, I do. I love doing it. But the fun part, I don't get to make a living playing games. I make my living writing and recording and editing and doing that shit. But I think again, it plays into how naive and almost childlike Bear's understanding of the world is. It reflects in his desires in life and the goal he has and what he's doing to achieve it, nothing, and his interpretation of romance and love. He just seems childlike. But another thing, this entire conversation again is focused on Bear. Bear doesn't flip the question. He doesn't ask about Nikki's writing and how it's coming along, which is what you normally should do if you're in a relationship. You want to, ping pong talks with each other, ask about each other's interests and shit. It doesn't happen. It's all about Bear. But with Bear again being interrupted again by Ian giving him a call, he actually picks up the phone this time, and Ian reveals that Nikki's dad is completely healthy as a spring chicken. With Ian doing some more digging, finding out that her dad was never in hospital, the hospital had never even heard of him, and if you are a cancer patient, you would be known by the hospital. But also he tells Bear that he heard from Sarah that Nikki saw Bear as a little brother, finding it extremely weird now that they are together in this way. And Bear now starts to realize, as he starts to basically have a small anxiety attack or panic attack, I'm guessing, oh shit, maybe the one wish willow actually worked, and maybe this isn't real, and the Nikki that he is dating isn't the real Nikki he fell in love with. But sitting down, Nikki has a gift for Bear. A tiger's eye, more specifically her mother's tiger's eye that she was given from her mother. And in Nikki's words, the tiger's eye is supposed to bring confidence and willpower, but what does it truly represent in this film? Well, the tiger's eye was given to Nikki by her mother, and this item was then given to Bear, a physical object that links to the real Nikki. This tiger's eye was not given to the Nikki he's dating, it was given to the one that he fell in love with. Also, quick note, we know Nikki doesn't have a good relationship with her father. Ian mentioned it, and father that she doesn't care about when Bear told him that she was sad that her dad had cancer. So we can assume that Nikki most likely comes from a single parent household, most likely raised by her mother, meaning anything that most likely was given to her by her mother would be extremely valuable to her. And being given a stone like this, which is meant to have a very deep intrinsic meaning, is very odd to give away. It doesn't make sense. We know Nikki is someone that really does want to be in tune with her feelings and really understand herself as much as possible. But I think something that she probably also does value a lot is the connections she has with people. She does express in the car scene earlier that being able to talk to Bear about these difficult things in her writing is something she values a lot. So we'd have to assume that if her mother was the one that raised her, she would value her a hell of a lot as well. So giving away a gift that was given to her just makes no sense. Unless if this new Nikki doesn't value it at all. She doesn't care about this gift because it isn't hers, if that makes sense. And the item itself is a similar style of item to the citrine necklace that Bear picked up earlier, which he scoffed at as stupid, believing that Nikki would find it stupid. Now finding that Nikki was very much into this stuff, this was something that she probably believed in, and her entire family believed in. And this scene right here, to me, proves that Bear didn't know the real Nikki that well. They weren't that close in a meaningful way. They were more likely just casual friends, but not real friends. Most likely friends through friends, if I had to assume, or friends due to work, which yeah, they probably are. But the ironic thing about this very gift is it embodies the very thing Bear needed to deal with all the problems that he had in life. First, actually talking to Nikki about his feelings. Courage, the courage to shoot his shot, the courage to express himself, the courage to lay his heart out on the table to be judged or potentially connect with her. But also the willpower to carry on with grief, to carry on after he has lost people within his life and hopefully grow from everything. He lacked willpower. There is a question of whether the real Nikki planted this as like a message to Bear. I don't think she did. I think this is a random gift that the new Nikki just gave him, seeing it as something that he should have. Because these are traits that Bear does need to improve on. He does need to understand that he needs to grow and embody these traits if he wants a healthy relationship with Nikki. But the funny thing is, with Bear looking at this stone, he has to confront the idea that the Nikki sitting in front of him and the one that he fell in love with in the first place are two very different people. And I think this right here is when Bear realizes that the wish changed Nikki in some way, and how he responds to this fact in his head will show his true character, as Bear could gain everything he wants from this in a selfish manner. But is this what Nikki wants? This defines if Bear is a good person. Now, Bear does initially think to go the route of maybe trying to figure out 100% if this Nikki was created from his wish, by asking a few choice questions after she states the fact that she could not live without Bear. That is not a healthy relationship where you feel like you cannot live without your partner. More on that in a minute though. First up, the first question that Bear asks Nikki is if she loves him more than anyone in the world. The very same wish that Bear made with his One Wish Willow. And Nikki confirms that she does love him more than anyone in the world, confirming his wish did come true. So he digs a bit deeper and asks about her dad, and Nikki loses it. Now, why would freaky Nikki, as I'm going to call her, lie about her dad having cancer? It's clear that whatever this thing is learning, and has found that connecting to Bear through trauma, sadness, grief, you name it, has been the best way to get close to him and almost force him to open up to her and connect with her. And this is a way that some people do develop relationships, strong ones at that. Sharing trauma is a way that people bond. I myself have a very interesting relationship with someone due to us both talking about grief and life shit when stuff got hard, and helping her when she was dealing with a terrible loss within her life. It's a quick way to either build a relationship between two people or strengthen it entirely. For me, this strengthened the relationship completely. I already had set foundations of that relationship, but that basically made it rock solid. I see her as a person that will probably always be present within my life, not in a super close way, but we want the best for each other. So this thing, which is not possessing Nikki, because director Curry wanted to make that abundantly clear that this isn't a possession or a demon or anything, but this thing came up with a tactic to work out the best way to win over Bear. But with Freaky Nikki realizing that that tactic won't work anymore as the facade has fallen, she asks a question after Bear basically gets her to calm down. And this question 100% confirms, if you were doubting that this is a different Nikki, then why does it matter? One, because it's fucking weird, but two, Nikki seemed like someone that was very down to earth and did appreciate and respected a lot of things. She's someone that collected stones because of probably energy and all that shit. I don't get that stuff, but that normally is an indication that someone's very in tune with life, that they respect life and they want the best for life. They wouldn't lie and make shit up to get something out of people. They understand that that could deeply hurt people and is kind of inviting bad things to happen. But from this point, Bear now gets the dialogue option, which will determine the ending of the game. He can either go for the good ending in the game, judging Nikki, stating that is extremely wrong and I don't want to see you anymore, and then goes to fix the problem that he created, or the bad run, which he chooses. He doesn't see a problem with it, and then we just hard cut to them having sex. And man, can't show that because bro's ass is out. But I want to make two observations. One, we have established that this isn't the real Nikki, this is something new, meaning she can't consent, and Bear knows this. He knows that this isn't the real Nikki. Well, I think he knows it at this point. So him having sex with Nikki when it's her not being able to consent because she's not in control of her body, it's rape. There's no two ways about it. It just is rape. Is there an interesting narrative theme for this? Yeah, there is. It does show what kind of person Bear is, and I think shows that Bear doesn't actually love Nikki at all because he physically defiles her now and forces himself upon her because that's all he cares about. He only cares about having her, not actually being in a relationship with her and building that relationship up. He just wants that possession and that feeling of love, or I guess the dopamine hit of pleasuring himself with her. But also, it looks like the Wish Nikki doesn't even look like she's really into it. She's just kind of motionless going along with it. She's not even engaged with the activity, and to me, this tells me that she doesn't even care about herself. This specific Wish Nikki, she only cares about pleasing Bear. She doesn't care. She's not into that. She's only there because she wants to love him as much as possible. She will do anything to do that. She's not trying to build a healthy relationship. She's just making this disturbing obsessive thing with it. She's not even looking at Bear during it. She's completely disconnected from it because she doesn't care about the pleasure she's feeling. This is a one-sided relationship, like right here. This is a visual representation of this one-sided relationship where it's all love for Bear and she doesn't matter. But after they finish up, during the night, Bear wakes up finding that Nikki has gone and he sees her standing in the corner, and I would have loved to have my recording of me watching the film for the first time because I just remember I loudly exclaimed "fuck that" when she revealed herself standing in the corner because oh, it's great. It's a great scare. I love it. But she is just watching Bear sleep. Bit strange, but I'm not going to rock your boat if you like doing that with your partner. Only with their consent though, that's what I'll say. But she refuses to return to bed, saying she doesn't like her dreams, and we get a clearer look at her face as she begins to cry in a very distorted sounded way. And she looks rather old, with her now believing that Bear doesn't love her as much as she loves him, and despite Bear wanting her to just come back to bed, she doesn't, so he goes along with her request of just going back to sleep. But then 20 seconds later, she shouts, "Why don't you love me?" It's clear to me that whatever this wish thing is, wants to build the love that Bear was thinking about in his mind when making the wish, a romance. But Bear isn't allowing for that sort of relationship to blossom. If Bear was open with his feelings, the relationship would have naturally happened, but because he doesn't truly love Nikki for who she is, this relationship cannot be built. This is shown by the fact that he doesn't want to save Nikki from the wish. He is running away from his emotions and running away from the responsibility of what he's done. He's not even opening up to the fake Nikki at all. And also he is always questioning her about what she is doing and how it's wrong, always judging her for who she is, proving that he doesn't love her at all. To me, it almost feels like this wish Nikki is freaking out because it needs to make this wish come true. Its only desire is to fulfill the wish, and because it can't, it's freaking out. The Wish Nikki doesn't believe it's fulfilling its purpose to cultivate that love that Bear desired so much, because it can't. It's impossible to. I've seen some people have the theory that maybe Bear's version of love is this obsessive love he then kind of wishes upon Nikki, but I don't think it's that. I do think Bear is a bit obsessive, but we don't really see to this level. It wouldn't make that much sense. I actually think it's because Bear isn't opening up. He isn't allowing this relationship to happen with this fake Nikki. It's physically impossible for this relationship and this love to be fulfilled because Bear won't allow it. Bear needs to be open, he needs to be emotionally weak to have this relationship build because he has underlying problems that will prevent it from happening. Again, every relationship you need two people. It takes two to tango, and Bear not even engaging with it to build this relationship makes it impossible, so the wish cannot come true no matter how hard the wish tries to make it come true. This is why the wish is now resorting to much more obsessive measures, watching him sleep, and we will see it becomes even more obsessed and more extreme with its measures. Now, within the next 20 seconds, this Nikki returns to the room bringing a pot of bouqueted roses. What do the roses mean? Well, they could mean anything, but I think it's the more important part is that she's obscuring her face again. We saw her face was heavily distorted as she was hiding in the darkness, hiding her true self, the true self of the Wish Nikki. And we heard that this Nikki doesn't like her dreams, but what were her dreams? Well, if you like weird theories like me, you might have heard a theory of quantum or multiverse dreaming, where dreams are actually glimpses into other versions of yourself. Now, is this setting up the obsession multiverse? No, probably not, but I think what this Wish Nikki's dreams are that of the real Nikki, be it the past experiences or what the real Nikki is experiencing now, making her scared of sleep. But we have seen the real Nikki take control twice so far, so maybe she is losing control as she gets tired and the real Nikki starts to be able to take control of the body again, so she doesn't want to sleep. She's scared that she'll be trapped within these dreams at some point. But once she puts the flowers down, she returns completely back to normal and just gets back into bed, but not before Bear tries to get up and gets yelled at. I'm sure he got some good sleep tonight now, didn't he? But as he gets up in the morning and gets ready for his shift, he finds himself having got his barnet done, which obviously he doesn't like, and then sits down to discuss with Nikki about his hair and asks her to not do any of this stuff anymore. Again, controlling her and telling her what is right and what is wrong. Even going on about how Nikki can't be weird and move weird, which I mean, yeah, kind of freaky, but she can do what she wants. She's her own person, so you shouldn't really be trying to control her fully. If you don't like how she's acting, you break up with them. You don't try to change and control people in relationships, especially not at extreme amount. But they talk a little bit, but the key point here is that Bear is controlling or trying to control the Wish Nikki again. He's trying to mold this Nikki into the girl that he wants. He wants this Nikki to be the Nikki he fell in love with. But the problem is, this Nikki can never be the Nikki that he wants, because this Nikki so desperately wants him to fall in love with her, it makes her act completely different to the real Nikki. So you have one side where this Nikki is trying to make Bear fall in love with her completely, and then on the other end you have Bear trying to change this Nikki into the one that he fell in love with. A fake Nikki that isn't real. A idyllic version of Nikki, if you will. But I think the worst parts of Bear are starting to rub off into the Wish Nikki, the more obsessive parts, with us now seeing this Nikki try kiss to shut him up and also physically trying to control him to get him to love her. We don't know if this is what Bear would have done and how he would have acted in a relationship, but we can assume that this is almost his perception of love in a way if it's rubbing off on her. This is all that matters. This is all a relationship is. It is just physical love. That's it. Nothing else. But again, it's the Wish Nikki trying to control Bear like he has been doing this entire time. They're both now trying to control and basically stop each other from doing the thing that they don't want to happen. But after the agreement is made about not being weird anymore, Bear goes to leave for work with his packed lunch, but he finds the door has been completely taped shut with duct tape, with the Wish Nikki now physically trying to lock Bear down, preventing him from leaving. But what does it mean? Well, it reflects the relationship itself. They are building this deep, expansive relationship that is messy. It's scary looking, and each piece of tape almost represents a different way that Nikki has tried to make Bear truly love her or Bear try to control her. But the duct tape is not a solid foundation. While at first it might seem Bear is locked in the room, with only a small amount of effort, the door eventually completely quickly rips open, reflecting that this relationship is like a house of cards built on sand. One wrong action, word, or question makes the entire house fall. The entire relationship can be ripped up at a moment's notice. There is nothing solid holding it down. And Bear knows this. That's why he opens the door. He knows it's fake. He doesn't believe it's real. And thus, Bear heads off to work and Nikki waits for him at the door, not moving. But we hear a small trickling noise start to drone in. Nikki soils herself. What does that mean? Well, it's clear that she's become extremely codependent on Bear, with her being unable to physically take care of herself or even care for herself at all, even in the presence of Bear. She doesn't care at all about herself. She only cares for Bear, completely negating her own health and desires, waiting at the door as he might walk through at any moment, being like almost an animal waiting for their owner to return home. We join Bear at his place of work, clearly conflicted about what is actually happening. But Munch has been provided and finds a small lunch prepared with some photos. A little bit creepy, and one of them says "not me" on it. Oh, and Sarah also joins him for lunch, with us learning that Ian hasn't invited Bear or Nikki to a party or a get-together that they're having, almost showing how this relationship between the two has strained the external relationships of the friend group. But also, Bear talks to Sarah about what Ian told him about her talking to Nikki about him getting friend-zoned, and they start kind of getting in a bit of an argument. But of course, like any time Bear starts to have a conversation that might lead to some character growth and the relationship being tested a bit or pushed forward in a direction that might change something, it gets interrupted. The conversation is now broken up, with now Sarah focusing on another letter from a school about her trying to get into it and her getting rejected, and the scene becomes a lot more personal now, with Sarah opening up to Bear about her regrets with how she acted within high school and not being able to get into, I'm guessing, a college. And we can see an actual relationship between these two, one which Bear actually functions in, and they do seem like good friends. But of course, not even having to say anything, just the simple action of Bear placing his head on hers shows a level of care he has for Sarah that almost unconsciously he does truly see her as a good friend and wants the best for her. Now, I'm also going to comment on an interesting perspective I've seen many people have about this film, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. Many people comment that why does Bear bother with Nikki? He could have just been with Sarah and been happy like that. No, in my opinion, that just, well, in a matter of fact in life, that wouldn't work. Bear isn't romantically interested in Sarah at all, and trying to force a relationship between these two people won't work. Despite them probably being pretty good for each other, if one party is not interested, you should not force it. The same problem would happen in the relationship that Bear's having with this fake Nikki. It would be one-sided. Sarah would love Bear more than he would love her, causing that same rift to ensue. Sarah isn't an all-purpose fix to his problems again. She would fall into the same trap of Bear being distant and emotionally detached from the relationship if he was in it with her. Sarah's relationship with Bear is meant to show that he is close with other people. He can have these deeper talks and talks about life and its hardships with people, and that it's meant to juxtapose that with the Nikki he's currently dating. But I want to make the point clear that even if Bear went out with Sarah, he chose Sarah, the same issues with his relationship would ensue. His lack of ability to open up and truly be himself, and the fact that he's not dealing with his grief, and he would try use Sarah to replace that void. The film would basically be the same thing, I would imagine, but instead of wishing for Nikki to fall in love with him, he would have wished for Sarah to fall in love with him if they weren't already going out. But it's the same shit, basically. People are just saying that Bear should be in a relationship that he doesn't want to because it's better for, I don't know who, everyone involved. It makes more sense. But if you then flip it to Bear's side, he would then say that he would want to be with Nikki because that's who he's interested in. I will say I do understand where people are coming from when they state this, because Bear does seem way more comfortable and himself around Sarah, and I actually do think she would be able to help him deal with his grief and go through it. But it's the wrong point entirely that you should say that these two should have been together and he should have pursued her. It's not what Bear wants. You can't force someone to something if they don't want it. You don't give someone a cup of tea if they say no. You get the point now, don't you? But also an important part here is that we see that Sarah is being very close with Bear. She's physically touching him and such, and being very open with him. And I'm sure this is not going to cause a rift in the relationship with his current obsessive partner becoming a little bit jealous. But also, it does show that Sarah, even though she knows Bear and Nikki are a thing, and even though she disagrees with it, she's still doing things that maybe are not for the best, and maybe showing a bit of jealousy on her part as well. But of course, we are now brought back to the lunch with the question, what's the verdict? Cat being brought to Bear. And Bear, after having a bite of that, realizes slowly that maybe the mystery meat in the sandwich that tastes a little bit different is a dead cat, more specifically, his dead cat. And with Bro freaking out and throwing it up, he doesn't tell anyone and just fucks off home, again showing us almost like they're both in this abusive relationship, with Bear hiding what this Nikki is doing to him, trying to shut everyone out and keep it isolated, again isolating himself even more. But before he can fuck off home, Ian asks him if he can get a ride, and this ride is extremely awkward, almost mirroring the one with Nikki. From the beginning, their relationship seems very different, Ian and Bear, with Ian being kind of more questioning of Bear as a person and not as, in my opinion, friendly. Ian now is rightfully questioning Bear about what is actually going on, which I mean, here Ian is actually being something of a decent person, actually worrying about both Bear and Nikki. Yeah, he does care more about Nikki, that's clear to see, as he's focusing more on if there's something wrong with Nikki and wondering if Bear is taking advantage of her, and that is a foil to Sarah, who cares more about what's happening with Bear and if Nikki is taking advantage of him. To me, it does show that these people are somewhat decent people, but it does show that there's an underlying maybe bit of malice beneath them, both for Ian and Sarah. Both of them only care about one side of the party, not both. They're not being fair friends to the pair of them. This is a problem that often arises when a friend group has a relationship within it. As I said, if shit happens, sides are often picked. If Ian or Sarah were good friends, they were genuinely concerned about what is happening for the both of them, they would go out of their way to figure this out and help get it sorted. But of course, because Bear is so shut out from the wider world, he isn't helping himself. And with Nikki being changed and being controlled by someone else who only loves Bear and cares about Bear, it's impossible to get their foot in the door. Can we blame Ian and Sarah for what happened? Not really. And we can't blame them for what is going to happen either. They're in an impossible situation. They want to help these people, but they can't because they aren't allowing them through the door. They're blocking them, and Bear is consistently doing that, now lying about what is happening to Ian. But of course, before any resolution can be made, Bear makes it about him again, asking about the party, questioning why Bear and Nikki were not invited. And I think in this moment, Ian does something really smart to prove to himself if this relationship is healthy. He says it's a boys' night, and only boys are allowed at the boys' night, of course, because they're going to be playing probably Halo and shit. So he says that only Bear can come, not Nikki. Nikki has to stay home. It's almost a test to see if Bear is able to be apart from Nikki, but also if Nikki can be apart from Bear as well. He wants to see if there is some weird codependency shit going on with dead dad, not dead dad, dead grandparent, cat, whatever, and these two have bonded in a very unhealthy way. Ian wants to figure that out. But with him now dropping Ian off and then going back home, as he's about to leave, he hears the One Wish Willow make its little tune again, and investigating the packaging, he finds a number on the back. And giving the number a ring, he connects to a line with a rather uninterested sounding man, with Bear asking if he can alter the wish. And the man on the phone asks if he wants to cancel the wish, but Bear restates he doesn't want to cancel the wish. He wants to modify the wish. He wants to change it. He doesn't want to break the wish. He wants to keep the wish, but not in the way that he first envisioned it. But of course, the man on the phone states that they can't do that, and even when Bear asks if he cancelled it, he then says no. But Bear has another question for him. He asks if the love that he is getting from this Nikki is real, and the man on the phone states, just because you chose this for her doesn't make it any less real. A key line stating that the love Nikki is displaying isn't out of her own choice. She doesn't love Bear of her own accord. She loves him because he forced it upon her. He changed who she was to make her love him. But of course, Bear wants to cancel the wish. The man says, nah, can't do that. And the only way that a wish can be reverted is that if Bear dies. With Bear now realizing the absolute shit he is in and the only way to fix it is to end himself, he kind of starts panicking. But the man on the phone does allow him to speak to the real Nikki. And all he hears on the phone is,
Who is that?
I really do love this scene a lot, because if you, as the viewer, hadn't realized what was happening at this point, it is spelled out to you here completely. And the shift that Bear has been having very slowly fully happens here. He completely turns into someone unrecognizable. From the man that was lonely and desperate for love, now is in a position where he's controlling, he's selfish, and most importantly, he's evil. The actions he takes are evil. There is no two ways about it. Bear is unable to run away or ignore this fact anymore, that the wish he made basically made Nikki a different person entirely. The real one is trapped somewhere else, in her body, in the One Wish Willow. We don't know where the real Nikki is being held, but we know she is the one that's been breaking out and freaking out each time she freaks out. The one that Bear has been living with and falling in love with isn't the real one. Now, there is a lot of theories about what this Nikki is and how it works, but the only information that the director Curry Baker has given us is that the wish that is created isn't a possession or a demon, it's a wish. He makes that very clear, but what does that really mean? It's been interpreted in many different ways, but how I interpreted it was that the wish almost overwrites a person's consciousness. In this case, to make the wish come true, it physically changes reality and changes the person themselves, or in this case, plants a completely different personality within that person to make that wish come true. It does everything in its power to make that wish come true. At first, it seemed like maybe it was just planting the idea of love in Nikki's head, and then slowly over time it took more and more control, with it eventually completely taking control. But rewatching the film quite a few times now, to me it's clear that there is a sudden shift. It's not a gradual one, it is immediate when that wish is made. Nikki changes to a completely different person, and the new entity, which we will call Freaky Nikki, starts learning and figures out a way to make Bear love her. It's a completely different person entirely. It isn't the Nikki that Bear fell in love with. I want to make that very clear. This new Nikki is something different entirely, and she's trying to fulfill a wish that is impossible, a wish that Nikki will love him and feel loved by him more than anyone in the world. She is obsessed with fulfilling this idea, and Bear giving attention to anyone else, to her, might feel like she isn't loving him enough. But also, the real Nikki wouldn't love Bear more than anything in the world. I personally don't like the idea of relationships being you have to care about that person more than anything. I think caring about someone more than yourself is healthy, but you still should care about yourself, your family, friends that are important to you. If you have kids, them especially. Relationships like this are not built on you being dependent and reliant on one another. They're built on you being able to bounce off one another and lift each other up, not needing each other. That's a key difference, I think, that builds a healthy relationship. But Bear's wish itself goes against this idea. For this wish to be real, he needs Nikki to love him more than anything in the world. She needs to basically destroy everything else for that wish to come true, because if Bear even has an inkling of love for anything, she's failed at her job. But because the real Nikki would never do this, it had to basically make a new person within her to fulfill said wish. But now, with Bear heading home and wanting to confront Nikki about her cooking the cat, he enters the house confronting the horror that has been created, finding Nikki in quite the state. She has become completely codependent on him, not even taking care of herself when he has gone to work, showing she is entirely reliant on him to live. And it's a great bit of horror, this. Again, horror is about making you uncomfortable, as Bear now realizes she will die if he tries to leave her or abandon her or run away from her. He knows that she will just kill herself. But with Nikki realizing she's quite dirty, she goes to clean herself up, and Bear asks her if he can go to the boys' night, which obviously she doesn't quite like, with her going right back to how she was, getting extremely upset, screaming, shouting and crying, and saying that he is going to leave her again. Honestly, it's a great scene, and you can see that this relationship has been built in an extremely unhealthy way between the pair of them. It shows an extremely toxic relationship right in front of us, and I'm sure many people would see this and would kind of remember maybe memories or moments where this exact thing happened to them. Maybe not their partner pissing and shitting themselves on the floor, but screaming at them, telling them that it's unfair that they're going to a boys' night and leaving them on their own at the house. You get the point. But of course, after Nikki starts throwing a tantrum, Bear immediately asks her to come and wants her to come, and then we cut to the party with Ian being annoyed that Bear brought Nikki. We can see that this relationship is causing friction or a rift within the group as a whole. Now, interestingly as well, it's not a boys' night because there is plenty of girls as well within the scene. And also, Nikki did state that Sarah also invited her to it, even though Ian said that he was going to tell Sarah to not worry about it, showing that it was never a boys' night. It was always just a general gathering, and Ian just wanted to test to see if Nikki and Bear could be apart. Now, of course, we join them as they're doing a little party drinking game, and of course, Nikki gets the dare to read the last thing that she wrote on her phone, and the last thing that she wrote is a small poem about Hansel and Gretel, and about the pair of them having sex. God, are we going back to Black Souls again? What the fuck? But the poem here itself hints about the relationship between Bear and Nikki. Hansel and Gretel, very clearly, are some famous siblings, and this entire story or poem is meant to reflect the fact that this relationship that they're having is incestuous in its feeling. Nikki did see Bear as a brother, I'm guessing, and them being together in this way might be weighing on this Nikki's mind that it's wrong. But also the details within the story that Nikki reads out are quite graphic, but do tell us a lot. I'm not going to go into the whole pull back the skin like licorice and insert it between my legs, because I'm pretty sure you can work out what that's trying to point out. The line that I'm more interested in is the last line. Hansel is my soul, love only the branch of a willow tree could conjure. Brother, you will be inside of me tonight. This is directly telling Bear that the love he has is a result of that mythical wish, not actual built love itself. But also, it's kind of fucked up a bit like an incestuous relationship because it is just wrong. And the love that this Nikki did feel originally was like sibling style love, more brotherly, and the wish itself has almost morphed that love into this really fucked up love where this wish Nikki is now writing a story about that love, that incestuous love, which really does show how much Nikki has changed in how she sees the world itself. I don't think the Nikki we met at the beginning of the film would write a story anything like this, especially something so graphic and about being entirely in love with their brother and being entirely reliant on them to live. But of course, after that, Bear gets a dare to kiss the person on his left, which of course turns out to be Sarah, which Nikki obviously doesn't like very much. So she moves Sarah out of the way, makes Bear kiss her, and then loudly exclaims her love for him. Quite an interesting horror scene, as it really does make you feel wildly uncomfortable, and the threats that she's making, you question whether she's going to actually do them. Kill everyone. But then with them being a little bit more lovey-dovey and then a bit cringe at her declaration of love, people move on and they get some drinks to deal with all the shit that's going on. But then the real Nikki breaks out again, exclaiming that it isn't me, and then starts trying to kill herself. And this moment, Bear doesn't get up and immediately try to help her. He just sits there, almost freaking out, and then you can hear in the background Ian rightly calling him an arsehole. And in this moment, Bear, I think, realizes this entire situation is fucked. There's no way he can hide this. Even after when they go to get medical help, the Nikki refuses to get help. We see that. She shakes her head and then dances in the car park, despite Bear asking desperately for help from the hospital. Because this Nikki is able to say that she doesn't want help, they can't legally help her. It's almost telling us that Bear can't push Nikki off onto someone else to fix her for him. He has to deal with it himself, the problem he's creating. So they just go home and he throws a little bit of a strop. And he starts blaming Nikki for what is happening, and Bear starts to confront reality now, asking if Nikki likes him, asking the wish Nikki if the real Nikki actually loves him. And her answer is, yes, and that she is his freaky Nikki. And again, this completely reinforces the fact that this is a completely different girl. This is not the same one he fell in love with. The name that she despised herself, she is now calling herself. And this is when Bear can no longer hide the fact or pretend that this isn't the real Nikki. He accepts it and he starts to scream and plead with Wish Nikki to just be Nikki. He is asking this, for a complete matter of fact, this new girl to be someone else. He wants her to be his ideal version of love, which she cannot give him. This relationship is extremely toxic on both sides, from the Wish Nikki, who is entirely reliant on him, is trying to control him and completely smother him, while Bear is trying to control her, change her and morph her into the version of the person that he wants to love, not actually fall in love with her at all. And at this point, with Nikki freaking out, screaming at him that she can't be Nikki, he realizes fully that this isn't real love. This isn't the love that he wanted. It's not real. But despite this Bear realizing that it isn't real, he still reciprocates the love, stating to the Nikki,
I love you too.
and that's when we see the real Nikki take control again with the famous backwards walking shot, with Nikki saying, "I think real me and rail my guts." A bit graphic and a bit extreme, but it does seem like the real Nikki is trying to break out and take control. And then she basically kind of like checks him by like almost running at him to attack him, but then is restrained again and pulled back. All the while Bear is sitting on the floor screaming, saying that, "Nikki, you're scaring me," probably pissing himself. But Bear makes the suggestion that she should sleep on her own and he should head out and stay at Ian's for the night and just have a bit of space. But of course, in response to this, the Wish Nikki knows the best way to get her way. She threatens to kill herself if he leaves. This shit is getting real fucking abusive now. And we see how both sides are abusing each other in completely different ways. With Bear obviously controlling and manipulating this Nikki to be a person that she can't be, and this Wish Nikki suicide baiting and emotionally blackmailing Bear to stay with her. She is trying to trap him in a relationship, not only physically but also emotionally as well. And in response to Nikki threatening to kill herself, Bear agrees to stay the night, knowing if he does leave, she will probably kill herself. But during the night, Bear gets a message from Sarah asking him to come see her, and despite him feeling now isn't the best time, he does agree, as Sarah states that she will come over to his house if he doesn't come to see her. And I mean, this is not a good thing to do. We can clearly see that Bear is struggling in a relationship, and now there's a girl trying to get in the middle of it, that you're kind of sending a bad message here. But also, don't do this in real life. Don't turn up to people's places uninvited. Don't invite yourself. If someone says they can't meet you, they can't meet you, unfortunately. Like, you can't just force your way in, no matter how close you are. It doesn't matter. So, of course, because Bear doesn't want Sarah to come over, he decides to go meet her. But as he's leaving, Nikki starts to talk to him, but Nikki asks him to kill her as the Wish is sleeping, and this is the real Nikki talking to Bear. And in this moment, with the real Nikki pleading with him to kill her, he asks her what would be so bad about being with him, truly showing his colors, as he's this evil person that believes that Nikki is wrong for rejecting him and his love. But Nikki rightly states, "You've never been with me, Bear. This isn't a relationship they've built. There is no foundation there. There's not even a house of cards on the sand. There's nothing there. It's fake completely." And Bear, knowing this, instead of actually trying to help Nikki, disappears into the darkness while she sits there crying to herself, wishing for it all to end. But of course, Bear goes to meet Sarah, and in this scene I really like it because it mirrors the first scene with Nikki in the car, but it feels very different. It's not as awkward and cold, it's casual, it's chill, and it feels like an actual friendship and a relationship with a foundation has been built between these people. But Bear starts to lie to Sarah about what is going on with Nikki, but Sarah does see that something is really wrong with that relationship between the two. There is something wrong with it. There's something going on, but she brushes it off, and she called him out here because she got her final letter from the school she applied to, and they make some jokes about using drugs to knock out their dad as they go get tattoos and stuff and do like friend shit where you do stuff you regret at 2 in the morning. But just as they're about to open that letter, Sarah tells Bear that Ian and Nikki were having some sort of casual friends with benefits fling thing, which Sarah believes that Nikki is dating Bear because Ian did something and she's trying to get back at him, explaining why Nikki felt like she was maybe lacking love. Maybe she was trying to build a relationship with Ian, but Ian wasn't really doing that. He was just being more casual with it, only really using Nikki as something to have fun with, I guess. And Sarah sees it as maybe Nikki is using Bear to just get back at Ian, with now Ian and Sarah seeing this relationship in 2 different ways. One with Sarah being almost maybe jealous of Nikki, seeing that Nikki is using Bear to get back at Ian, while Ian sees it as Bear stealing his girl maybe, and why he's so annoyed and protective of Nikki at first. Also, this is a really fucking shitty bro code thing to do. One rule I always had with my boys was, if you had any feelings for a girl, you let us know, because we won't mess around with that girl. We won't try to do anything with that girl. Obviously, as time went on, certain boys betrayed that code and shit happened, but there was always a rule we always followed, and we all were pretty good for it. It's a way to keep friends in line. And I know a lot of people will say like, oh, you shouldn't really do this, but it makes friendships messy. If one of the guys has a crush on a girl and then another guy does and they both start fighting over her, it gets messy quick. And because of this rule that we had, it kept it clean and meant that we were more civilized than just animals going after anyone we wanted. Didn't stop them though, did it? But here now, Sarah starts to be more personal with Bear and almost starts to imply that she likes Bear, talking about how she was on his left in that game and was going to be kissed by him, and maybe she wanted to be kissed with him. And Bear starts to almost reciprocate the idea, sort of throw the hook in the pond. He starts to play with the idea that maybe the relationship could be built here with a solid foundation. And hey, maybe they would be good together. Maybe they are a good couple. They are a perfect fit for one another. Maybe something beautiful can blossom between them. But because of what Bear's been doing, and him running away from his grief and his problems and not dealing with these problems and creating something monstrous, something comes in and destroys it all. Nikki bashes through the window and then smashes Sarah's face into a bloody pulp. I fucking love it. It's great horror. It's a great shocking moment. We have this nice building moment of like a beautiful relationship, which is then immediately just smashed with a brick. It's amazing. It's great horror. It's shocking. And it really does make you feel disgusted and really there with Bear, who is just speechless about what's happening. He's not screaming. He's just in shock. But again, having that nice little heartwarming moment then flipped upside down, and now Nikki comes in and starts blaming Bear for what happens, is great. But she starts controlling Bear about what is going on, telling him that they need to clean up the body, that they need to fix this, and that he's to blame for everything. Everything that's going wrong in Bear's life is his fault. And is she wrong? No, she's not. She's completely right. Bear hasn't been able to move on from his grief, which led to him killing his cat because he wouldn't clean up the fucking drugs, which then led to him making a very irrational decision with a wish, which led to him building a very toxic relationship with the girl of his dreams, which has now led to one of his friends being extremely hurt. Well, killed. It's a bit dramatic, but to me, Sarah's death isn't meant to be like, oh, a shocking kill moment. It's meant to more represent how bad relationships like this within friend groups, they can be so toxic that they spread outwards and kill the relationships with other people. Not only killing the friendship between Nikki and Sarah, but also the friendship or potential relationship that Bear and Sarah might have had in the future. This one relationship does that. It's completely snuffed out and destroyed forever in a very violent way. Oh, and in that letter, by the way, that Bear kept, he finds out that Sarah did get in the school that she applied to, almost showing that his actions directly ruined the future of someone else because they themselves couldn't focus on themselves and they were being affected by the problems that Bear was having. Almost showing how if you're in a bad emotional state, you're doing stupid things, getting yourself in trouble, or just being a dick, you can really affect other people in dramatic ways. Is why it's so important to confront things like grief, because grief, if not dealt with and you don't allow yourself to go through it, it doesn't only affect you, it can affect other people. You can damage relationships with other people, which then can have a domino effect and hurt them in ways that you can't imagine. It's a really scary thing to talk about, but it's so important that you do deal with these emotions and really go through it, because you need to. You need to let yourself feel that pain so you can heal from it. But of course, Bear lets his anger out a bit, starts screaming. and then he believes that he can fix the problem that he made, even though Sarah is dead, so the problem has completely broken something in the life that can never be fixed. He heads back to the shop and starts shouting at the shopkeep, letting his anger out, asking where the One Wish willows are, but then sees himself in the mirror, realizing that he himself has become a monster himself. It's not just Nikki who has become this insane psycho. He himself is that monster as well. Or maybe he's reflecting on the point that maybe he is the true problem within this, not the item that he bought. He's sitting here blaming the shopkeep for selling it, and then maybe reflecting that maybe it isn't the shopkeep's fault. He was the one that made the wish. He had those feelings and he created this wish Nikki. He himself is responsible for everything that happened. Is it intentional? No. But like emotions, sometimes you don't intentionally mean to do things, and it's the reason you need to deal with things such as grief and sadness and anger. You can't let them stew and boil up till the point they start affecting others. But the shopkeep does give him some advice to get someone to make a wish that will contradict the wish he made or kill himself. And this is actually really important because basically the shopkeeper gives him two options here. Either find someone else that will help him fix the problem he made, or fix it himself. Yes, I do think killing yourself is a bit extreme, but if Bear is truly in love with Nikki and wants to save her, I don't think he would hesitate to shoot himself to do so. And that point that he doesn't truly love Nikki is reinforced in the fact that when the real Nikki was pleading out to him, he didn't help her. He just walked away. Again, it's layering itself. It's reinforcing the fact, and it's showing us truly what Bear's character is. He doesn't love Nikki for who she is. He loves the idea of being with her and kind of possessing her in a way. He just wants her to be his. He's being selfish at this moment. He has done so many selfish things throughout this entire film. Lied, manipulated, tried to change someone into something they aren't. And in the end, he's being presented with the option of being selfless, or again, pushing his problems off again to another person, taking their one wish away from them, which they could use to change their lives for the better. But if he goes out of his way to try find a way to fix it with someone else's help, I think it does show that maybe he, again, is running away from his problems and trying to get someone else to fix it. But I do agree that probably in this situation, I would probably try find someone to fix it for me before blowing my head off, but that's because I'm a complete and utter pussy. So Bear quickly buying a few more, he now needs to find someone that can make a wish to reverse his wish. But first he tries to make another wish despite being told you only get one wish, making the wish that Nikki will only love him as a friend. Still in this moment, with another wish being presented to him, he doesn't try to free Nikki. How would the wish be? Well, it would be, I wish that Nikki would be free from the wish I made. That would be a wish that would actually break the wish. Here he makes another wish, meaning he still has some sort of control over Nikki, but of course he can't break it because you only get one wish. So he needs to find someone else to take the One Wish Willow to and make the wish for him. So he heads to Ian, who upon seeing Bear covered in blood and rambling about some shit, he freaks out and panics about if Nikki is okay. But Bear tells him that Nikki's okay and gives him the One Wish Willow, and he asks Ian to make a wish to reverse the wish that he made. And upon Ian hearing this, that all this shit happened because of a wish, he believes that Bear is a complete fucking wacko, and rightfully so. But I think this moment does truly show their friendship and the level that it is at. Picture this, your top lad, your best mate comes to you with some absolute wacko shit that you don't believe, but you are meant to be friends with this person. In this moment, will you say reject them, say they're wrong and go against them, or will you at least help them a bit to find out if they are completely crazy or if they're telling the truth? I think most friends would help out a friend that is close to them. I know I would, but here, instead of Ian immediately wanting to help Bear, he doesn't. Upon receiving the One Wish Willow, he scoffs at it, shakes his head and wishes for $1 billion. Now dooming Nikki and Bear to the very wish that he made, and Bear looks extremely pissed at Ian, realizing that this was probably one of his only ways to free Nikki without him killing himself. But why is Bear angry at Ian? It's not Ian's fault, is it? Well, kind of, I guess. If Ian did believe Bear and was a good friend, they could save Nikki together, but it does show that there is a kind of strained relationship here that isn't as close as maybe you might have believed at first. Now, is it believable that Ian didn't believe Bear? Yeah, that is completely believable, but to me, I still think a good friend would try to help a friend, or maybe that shows how naive I am, because I do believe deep down a true friend would try to help another friend and go along with it just to find out if what they're going on about is true. Also, it does kind of show how much of an arse Ian is in general. Ian throughout the entire film has been questioning this relationship, wondering if something happened to Nikki, if there's something mentally wrong with her. And then with Bear coming to him with this thing, and he's talking about, I made this wish and it changed her completely and it's why this is all happening. And his immediate thought isn't to, oh, I should help him. He's most likely so disgusted by what Bear is saying and what he's done that he doesn't want to help him. And I understand why people would think this. Bear is the wrong person. He's the evil person. Why would you help him? But at the end of the day, Nikki is innocent, and Ian really should have helped Bear, even if this fucking thing sounds so stupid, because if it means that this will help Nikki and fix whatever's wrong with her, he should do it. But then maybe that shows that Ian doesn't love Nikki at all either. He only cares about himself, wishing for $1 billion because, hey, that's what he wants. But I do think it just shows how selfish Ian is, and it does show that pretty much everyone in this friend group is fairly selfish overall. I mean, I guess the only one we could say is not is Nikki, because we don't really get a lot of time with her, well, the real her. But yeah, kind of fucked. So now with Bear's plan A going tits up, he now goes for plan B, heading back to his home to give Nikki a one-wish willow and make her make a wish for him, because she will do anything he wants because it will make him happy. But upon returning, he finds the house has been redecorated quite a bit, and we can see behind him that Nikki is moving around a bit like a puppet, almost like she is being controlled and is on strings. And also, Sarah's body is set up in the other room, being completely stripped of her clothes and her hair ripped off. I can't show it because tits are out. But now we see Nikki is wearing Sarah's clothes, has fake tattoos on, or maybe they are real tattoos, and has put her hair on. Now going fully freaky mode, and in such a desperation to make Bear love her, she killed Sarah and took her skin and tries to be her. I saw an interesting theory online that because of how obsessed the wish made this Nikki, that the idea of Bear being close to someone else or even being in love with someone else would make the obsessed Nikki act even more extreme, because she needs to make him love her. Like, it's that obsessive that it needs to eliminate any other love within his life. This of course would then lead to most likely his friends being killed, any other close family relationships that he has. Definitely a scary thought. But as Nikki is going full freak mode, we can hear Ian in the background banging on the door talking about his $1 billion, and as soon as he enters the room, shit goes crazy, Ian gets shot, and he just dies. Great scene, because it just shows how shit is just happening and how shocking it is. I think a lot of films, and especially horror films, would make the mistake of making the protagonist scream in horror. But I think a lot of people don't realize is that when something like this does happen, there is that initial shock where just you have no clue what just happened and it's taking time to process. And because Bear isn't processing any fucking emotions whatsoever, he doesn't even freak out from it. Yeah, he's scared of it, but he's not screaming, crying, pissing and shitting himself. He's just terrified. His eyes widen and he's just, holy shit, this woman is crazy moment. But as that's happening and Nikki threatens to shoot herself, Bear loudly exclaims his love for her and she starts to calm down, playing into the delusion. He then starts to play a bit, convincing her that they're going to freshen up, and then locks himself in the bathroom, which of course the wish Nikki does not like, and Bear starts to come up with a plan to free himself from it all. Kill himself. First of all, he pulls out the tiger's eye and places it on the sink, almost showing that maybe he has to gain some courage and willpower to go through with killing himself. But even in this moment, with the gun in his hand and in his mouth, he cannot do it, pussying out and then turning to the sleeping pills that he has in his cupboard. The much easier way out, but after he has ingested a bunch of them, enough to 100% kill himself, he still tries to immediately back out, showing that even in this moment, Bear still lacks the courage and the willpower to truly fix the problem he created. But as he is trying to throw them up, we hear a distinct in the background. With the wish Nikki having found the one wish willow that Bear dropped earlier, she makes her own wish. What was that wish? Well, we never actually find out what it is, but we can assume it is something along the lines for Bear to love her in the same way that she loves Bear, fully shifting Bear into a completely new person, with him now going out of the bathroom and seeing Nikki for the first time since this wish was enacted, and this is the first time that these two entities actually feel true love for one another, and we almost get a true romantic ending for these two, playing into the delusion that Bear had. And this scene is shot really well, and you can really feel the romance between these two things, whatever they are, these two wishes, as the camera always focuses on their face and more specifically their eyes. And as it slowly shifts in, of course, the two come together, have some sort of nice moment, but of course, those drugs are still within Bear's body and they start to kick in, and that slow droning starts to come in as the horror enacts itself upon the wished beings, with Bear slowly dropping to the floor and then starts to foam at the mouth due to an overdose. As Bear is dying, Nikki, or the wish Nikki, goes to kill herself, but of course, just as Bear dies, the wish breaks, freeing the real Nikki from the wish. And man, it is a great ending, as Nikki looks around the room in complete horror and disgust, crying and screaming out, "What did you do?" or "Why did you do this?" The camera slowly flips upside down, focusing on the TV screen, allowing the credits to play, displaying to us that this one action completely flipped the life of Nikki upside down, as she is forced to carry on her life after all the shit that just happened, either being arrested and put in prison or somehow being able to weasel her way out of it and claim that she was a victim of what has happened. And that ends Obsession. The longer I sit with Obsession and each time I rewatch the film, the more the supernatural elements of the film to me become such a small interest. Yes, I could dive into what the wish actually is, the meaning behind it, the origins of it potentially and where it came from, but to me that is not what Obsession is about. It is such a small part of the film because the wish that Bear makes doesn't create his obsession, it just exposes the dark void within him that has always been there. And I think that is why it has caught the interest of not only me, but so many people, and why the film is doing so well. You can enjoy this film at almost any angle and get something out of it, but within it is a deeply personal message that can apply to any of us. To me, Obsession isn't an incel horror film, or the horror of having a crazy girlfriend, or the horror of a toxic relationship. To me, Obsession shows the horror that grief can cause. Bear throughout the film never actually learns to live with his loss, and each loss he experiences creates a new hole or expands the hole which the darkness within himself leaks out of. First his grandmother, then his cat, and then the fear of losing what he gained with Nikki. So he then makes the wish to fulfill that. Instead of learning to let go and live on his own, Bear never learned to deal with any of this. He never learned to deal with the loss that he experienced, and we can see that with how he is living, not changing his grandma's house or throwing out all of their old belongings and meds. And when his cat dies, it's the first clear sign that if he doesn't change his ways and deal and process his grief, it will break him and destroy his life, as it took one of his first loved things in the world away from him. But he believed foolishly that Nikki was the answer to his grief, and that he didn't want to experience it. He wanted to replace it. He wanted to cover up his grief. And that is something that I personally relate to way too much. I remember when I was younger and dealing with losing quite a lot of family members in my life within like a very close proximity in time, and trying to process the grief and like what's the point of life if it all just ends at some point. And instead of coming to a natural conclusion and dealing with it all myself and talking to people about it, I very obviously bottled it up, and eventually my meaning and what I believed was my purpose was someone else. A girl, of course. I hate to say it, like I really do, but I truly do understand the feelings that Bear has in this film, as I remember feeling them almost exactly. But Bear represents what happens when you go too far in that direction, and that ties into the central conflict of romance versus a love story. Earlier in the film, Bear asks Nikki what is the difference between a romance and a love story, believing they are both the same thing, because Bear believes that romance and love always ends suffering. He thinks that if if he feels love, the suffering and pain will fade, but Nikki understands that love and pain coexist together. They both are a part of grief itself. Grief is the pain of love everlasting. It's living proof of that love, and it feels so painful because you can't give it. Love itself creates grief, which creates pain, but we love despite knowing that it will eventually lead to grief and pain, because the act of love and the feeling of love makes life that much more beautiful and meaningful. Bear believes that love will save him from pain, just like how I once thought. While Nikki understands that before anyone else can feel true love again, she needs to understand herself and truly be in tune with what life actually is. And that's where I am now, after years of dealing with my problems around grief and trying to deal with it and go through it. It takes a long time. The pair of them are moving in wildly different directions and explains why this relationship would never work out, and the wish itself is proof of that. The wish doesn't create love between them, the sort of natural love that can occur, it forces it. It makes something that is beautiful, disturbing, and ugly, because it is. Because a love born out of that idea that it's needed to fix pain and grief isn't true love, it's unnatural. It creates the version of love that Bear thinks he wants. He wants Nikki to love him more than anything, not to be happy. He wants to feel that love because he wants to make himself feel better. He doesn't want to live a good life or figure himself out. He just wants to fix himself. He doesn't want what's best for Nikki. He wants her entire world to be him, and the wish grants exactly that. He becomes the only thing Nikki cares for and creates the horror that we see throughout the film. No healthy relationship is like that, and that's what I learned in my life. I thought I had to give everything I could to that significant other, not realizing maybe that's not what they want. And I misunderstood what love truly is. And it isn't about giving your all to someone else, it's about being with someone else. In the moment, present in the time, caring for them and actually being there for them, not trying to make something that isn't real. And that's the monster of this film. It's Bear's misunderstanding of what love is. Bear never actually asks throughout the entire film what Nikki wants. She only occasionally brings it up through chance conversation. He never directly asks, what do you want in life? How are you feeling? Where do you want to go? We never see that because it doesn't matter to him. The film almost never dives into her actual life because, again, to Bear, she doesn't matter. The only time Bear cares about anything about Nikki is when it relates to him and how it will affect him. The only reason he cared about her lying about her dead dad is because he thought maybe she was using him for something. And the only time he shows any sort of care or wants to help Nikki out is so that he himself can get closer to her. The car scene and the phone call at the beginning, I think, stick out the most because that's when Nikki is being very vulnerable and opening up to Bear, giving him the prime opportunity to actually build a solid foundation and an actual relationship with her, but he doesn't. He doesn't actually ask hard questions and really check on her. And the reason for this is because he doesn't truly care for what she wants, because what Nikki wants might not benefit Bear in any way. For example, she wants to leave her job, but if she leaves her job, Bear won't be able to see her anymore at work every day. It negatively impacts Bear's life, so he doesn't push her, he doesn't encourage her to do that. If he did love her, he would encourage her to find a life that she can be happy with. She wants to feel love in a way that Bear can't give or can never understand in the way he currently is. So he doesn't think to go into the details of it because Bear believes that if he falls in love with Nikki and she falls in love with him, everything will fix itself. Bear wants to get into a relationship that not only isn't there, but also one that he entirely is not ready for mentally. And that's due to his grief. Grief can be a scary, terrifying thing because if you're left alone with it for far too long, it can change not only the way you see the world, but people as well. Instead of seeing them for who they are, flaws and good things about them and things you don't like and things you love, you start seeing people differently. You see them as solutions, distractions, things to hate, things to escape with, or targets to chase or attack, emotional crutches to lean on and use. And that's not fair to them because others shouldn't carry the weight of another person or be exposed to their feelings and hatred and annoyance in life. Grief can do all of that. And that's what Bear does to everyone, not just Nikki. He exposes them to that grief. They all are impacted by his own feelings and what he is unable to deal with. And I'm sure that's what many people do during grief. They lash out, they lean on people too hard, they do things that they regret years later. I myself did that. I made that mistake. I bottled up my feelings too much, and it led to me leaning on people too much, needing people too much, and at times not being a good person. Love itself isn't finding someone to complete the parts of yourself that you believe you miss, or to fill in a void that is left within you. It's not about that. Love itself is becoming capable of loving another person for who they are rather than what they give you or who you need them to be. Love isn't about being with someone to distract yourself from the pain, or a pretty face to talk to at a dinner table during a date. They are their own people with their own problems that they have to deal with. They have their own dreams and desires and things they want to chase. And being in love with that person means you want to see all of it. You want to help them in any way you can, but that doesn't mean you neglect yourself. You both push each other to reach those new heights, chase those dreams, and maybe pull each other back when you know one of them is doing a bad thing. And most importantly, someone that you truly love and you both love each other, they are there to bear the dark days together with you. Bear doesn't love Nikki. He's in love with being loved by Nikki. He doesn't care for her as a person and never learns that love will never fix his pain. The pain he feels from grief, because that itself is born from grief. Grief, again, is the pain of love everlasting. It's living proof that love existed. And while I do believe that is the lesson that obsession wants to teach us, and it's one that I've learned and given to those I care deeply about throughout my life, grief isn't something that you should fear. It's something that you should allow yourself to experience. Grief isn't the opposite of love. It's the price that we pay for it. Every tear we shed, every sleepless night you have, every moment where you feel the hole that someone has left in your life is proof of that love. Proof that you were lucky to have someone worth missing this deeply. Bear spends the entire film trying to outrun that pain. He searches for someone to replace or fill the void within him and silence it, but grief doesn't work like that. The only way through grief is through it. You could only run from it for so long. The people we lost don't leave holes in our lives because life is cruel. They leave them because they mattered. And while grief may never completely disappear, neither does the love that it created. We carry both with us for the rest of our lives. One to remind us of what we've lost, but the other to also remind us of how lucky we were to have it in the first place. But if we spend our lives running from grief, we also run from the love that we once were given and the meaning that that love had. I've learned that I'd rather carry the pain than pretend the people who gave it to me never mattered. The people we love were never meant to complete us. They walk alongside us for as long as life allows, changing who we are in ways we cannot predict along the way. When they leave, grief changes us one last time. Not because it wants to destroy us, but because love always leaves a mark when it matters. Hello lads and lasses. Thank you for watching. I know this video took way longer than I wanted it to. There's many reasons for that. Hospital shit, health shit, also working with a new editor. This video was entirely edited by an editor that I decided to give a chance on, and he's going to be doing the next few videos for me to test to see if I like his style, and I do quite like it. Hopefully you enjoy. Let me know what you think and let me know what you'd improve so I can pass the notes on to him. Anyway, quick shout out to all channel members, including Chelsea and Tyler, Gator, Darren76, It's Bert, Carter Phillips, Corrego, Zaralino, Kento, The Paragon Khan, Ashley, Jen Caliber, Jamie Barrett, Juniper LP, Synapse, Lolink12, Mr. Disappear, Shaku, Yagito, Hansen Emmy, Yavun Hammond, Corazonta, Tyler Reeves, Saint CL, Zartane FF14, Renegade, Sailor Peach, Seren Soji, Quietus Law, King, Yueto Kazuki, Vracula, Benjamin Schmidt, Hayabusa, Austin Smith, Lul, Not Saber, Dan Larat, Ketchum Soup, Yoshi Miuka, Elite 0101, and Elite 0101. Thank you all for your support. It is greatly appreciated. Now, yes, this video did take a while to make, and sorry about that. However, hopefully, now, the next few videos should be smooth sailing. Not only did it take me a while to actually get this stuff ready for him to edit, but also, of course, he's a new editor, he's working with me, and him figuring out his style and how to edit. It took a while to get that all down, I'd assume. Also, it's a movie, so it required a hell of a lot more editing to do, and I'm very fucking grateful he was willing to do this video, because I would not be able to make this video anywhere near as good as he made it. So I'm very grateful for that. The next video will be Outlast 2, and I hope it won't take as long for it to be made. The video, for me, is actually done. I've fully completed my parts, the recording and the base editing. I've handed it off to him now to do the editing part. So hopefully within the next 2 weeks, I'll get it back. I hope to have videos out every 2 weeks. And then the video after that will be Dying Light 2, and I'm currently recording that and working on that. But then after that, I'm planning on doing a Bully, because I want to do a Rockstar game, and it was either that or like GTA 4, and I didn't want to play GTA 4 again. So I'm going to play Bully, because Bully's a fun game. Also something different for me to analyze, gives me a challenge. But then after that, we will be sort of September-ish time, late September time if I had to assume. It'll be around my birthday, and again, I want to do a special game for my birthday. I was originally going to probably do Counter-Strike, but I don't really want to do it anymore because I don't really know how to script that video. It's also been 10 years now that I've been playing CS, like on and off, so I thought it was kind of fun to do that, but I'm not going to do that. I've changed my mind. I want to do Dead Island. I said months ago when I did Dying Light, I was originally going to do a Dead Island video. I'm going to do Dead Island. I'm going to play it on my birthday. I might stream it. Let me know what you guys think if you want me to stream it. I don't know. I'm undecided because I have got a week off for my birthday from my actual job, so I'm going to be working like hell on YouTube. But let me know, because I'm definitely tempted to do that. Also, if you guys enjoyed me doing a movie, let me know, because I will do other movies if you want me to. I did really enjoy making this video and scripting it, because it requires a very different style of writing and like analysis, because there's no game design that I can talk about. It's all character stuff, so it's very fun to do. So if you want me to do other horror films or other films in general, let me know. I'm sure some people might recommend something like Backrooms. I don't mind Backrooms. It was all right. Not big on it though. But any other films, let me know. I might consider them. But yeah, I hope to do this alongside the games because I found it really, really fun. So I probably will do a few more. Anyway, that is entirely enough waffling from me. See you around. Crocodile.